Alright, so, where were we? Part 3. Um, alright, so I used to pass out blankets in Boulder. Um, after, I left Virginia and Boulder became a giant pain in the butt, I was able to get a hold of Maddie, and, I begged her to kill me, and I told her I wanted to shoot myself in front of her. That's because I was being punished and I wasn't allowed to defend myself. I was asking them to make it stop. She let me know that she was having some issues, and despite the fact that all of this started over her mouth, I went from being angry at her and wanting to kill myself in front of her to wanting to give her some space and let her heal up. Something that I wasn't afforded. Um, there were a lot of people who I've loved very much that when their time came to no longer be a part of my life, I let them go. The same thing I tried to do with Maddie and Natalie and Alicia. The problem is, because of what I had been accused of, I was not allowed to see my loved ones, and that is extremely important. I have panic attacks over texting because I can't type fast enough and I can't defend myself in texting. You can't hear my vocal tone, so you just assume whatever it is that you've got in your head, whatever your insecurities are, whatever your bias are, those go into the way that you read what it is that I'm trying to say. It's not read with my voice, you read it with your own internal monologue. I really should be making this an educational video, but the only reason I say that is because a woman has a friend of hers who's suicidal, and she was asking me to talk to him. Here's the problem with that. When somebody is suicidal and they reach out to you, they need someone to talk to who will listen. Most of you guys, you're so set on people are talking to you expecting a response. No, they just need you to listen. At the end of it, maybe come up with a solution, but they might not need that. However, if you're busy with your own internal monologue while they're speaking, you're not hearing everything that they're saying. That's where people like me are special. I can put myself in your shoes. I get immersed in your story, and I put myself in your shoes. While you're telling the story, that's what I'm doing. Putting myself in your shoes. Even if I'm angry at you, or hate you, or whatever it is that you want to call it, I still want to hear it. However, when Maddie was being like that, I gave her time, and it got to the point where I couldn't give it any more time. I was Aunt B, Brenda Dickinson, she helped me get into housing in Nebraska. Now, I'd tried to get into housing multiple times, but I was unable to. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Aunt B knew the lady who was in charge of the low income in Chapel, and she helped me to get it all set up. Now, you're going to notice something about all of my heroes. None of them are perfect. All of them screw up. Every one of them. I've been people's heroes too, and I've screwed up as well. I'm not perfect. When I couldn't go to Boulder and see my brother, who, by the way, is a meth head, I still love him. Kind of like Natalie and Alicia's mother still loved them, despite the fact that they're addicts. She just didn't love them enough. She didn't love them right. She didn't love them well enough to listen. So, I had been trying to get the police to listen to me. That resulted in people who didn't care. They wanted to complain on Facebook about me being suicidal and call the police because I was suicidal. The police aren't going to do anything. I already knew that by that point. I was hoping, though. So when January came around and those officers came to my apartment in Chapel, Nebraska, um, they took me to Sydney to the hospital there. And from there, they hooked me up with Nicole Peralta, who is a therapist in Sydney, Nebraska. They also hooked me up with a woman named Tamara from Region 1. Tamara had a 14-year-old son who had Asperger's. Um, the thing with the autistic spectrum is that stuff changes so often that things aren't the same next year. They're probably going to change a lot of stuff this year about what's autism and what is expected. But the biggest issue is that I didn't grow up socializing with normal mainstream children. I grew up getting beaten up for the color of my skin. So I couldn't go back to what's familiar to me. I didn't have a safe place anymore. um, Sorry, there's noises going off in the background. I don't know if the mic is picking it up or not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to pause it while the screaming's going on. Alright, so after Virginia, there was a few people who tried to help. They didn't have the time. They didn't have the time to listen. Brandon Ratner, he came down and tried to listen to me. He broke up with Veronica, and he was still my friend, which is important to me. There's a guy named Case Morris who he was one of my friends in high school who turned into a meth head after high school. Alright, I need to pause this again. Alright, I'm back. It was a pretty long pause, so I don't actually remember where I'm at. And if I try to rewind this to find out where I was at, I will lose the video. So I'm going to try to continue from here. So when I left Virginia and I got that place in Chapel, and I was taken to Scottsbluff or to Sydney, I got Nicole Peralta as the lady who was helping me, my therapist, and then I also got a really cool lady named Tamara who understood autism. One of the first conversations that Natalie and I had after we became friends was about autism and how she understood it because her brother's autistic. I was more screaming. Alright, I'm going to pause again. For me, the noises in the background are overwhelming. Anytime there's screaming, I'm overwhelmed. I don't like confrontation. As far as the stuff going on in the background now, it's breaking my concentration, and I can't remember where I was at, but I'm trying. And that's the important part, is that I'm still trying. I don't want to, though. I don't want to be somewhere where they're screaming. I need a place where I'm safe. That apartment in Chapel, it wasn't a safe place for me. That's because, well, number one, I couldn't have people come and see me. And number two, it was too far away from anybody who would come and see me. My friends aren't rich. Now, I did have some visitors there from Boulder. Between Nicole Peralta and Tamara, I was able to get disability. I'd been applying for disability since I turned 18. A lot of the places that I was at, it's what was required. Like when I was staying with my Aunt Mary, in order for me to stay there, I had to apply for disability and I had to get a job. You're not going to get disability if you have a job. That's something that's difficult to explain to people. Now, there's I have to pause now. There's a lady who's got a friend who's suicidal, so this is like the 5th time I've paused this video. I'm gonna try to help her out. Alright, so, for Chapel, Nebraska, that apartment there, it was not a safe place for me because I was stuck there in my own head with nothing to do all the time. I'm not somebody who can do that. I have to be active. I have to keep my brain active. I have to keep it occupied. That's why jail is such a terrible thing. There's no music there. The conversation sucks. And you have no rights as a human being. People can do whatever they want to you. Now, I finally got disability, and um, that money was going to pay my rent. My rent went from $50 a month to $217 a month. And I was seeing my therapist. I tried to keep my place for a full year so I could improve my credit. Well, that didn't get to happen. I stayed there the full year, but I didn't leave there properly. I tried to, but there was a time limit on it. Throughout 2017, I had people threatening me on the internet, and I had people actually doing things to me in real life. Now, the people on the internet shows the mentality that I was dealing with. However, people with that mentality, when you encounter them in real life, are violent. It finally got to the point in June of 2017 that I had had enough. I got a hold of, well, we should backtrack just a little bit in 2017. I went to see Amy and Andrew Witcher, and they lived in Bayard, Nebraska, which is where my dad's from, and my Aunt Mary and all of them. Well, she's also my cousin. Amy Witcher is. I went to go see them, and Andrew, he's been having a lot of problems with staying off the meth, and this occasion was no different. He kept on accusing everybody of being on meth, and his wife was finding his meth stuff, so he was saying that it was from the people who lived in the house before, and all the standard excuses you hear from an addict. But Andrew's also a good man. I love him very much. He's not an animal, he's a human being. So when we were in Bayard, I had a different phone, and I tried to get a hold of Natalie to ask her to put a stop to it. Please, And I had started making videos, and I started making posts. I didn't really get into the videos until later, but I started making posts so that people would, if they cared, they could go back and take a look at it and see what it is that I was going through. Because they weren't talking to me in real life, they were only texting me. And I can't text them fast enough for them not to become cruel to me because I don't text fast enough. And I let everybody know that texting gives me panic attacks. That's the problem, is that none of these people would talk to me, they would only text. So it got to the point where I needed to be around people who loved me, people who had time for me. Don't get me wrong, Aunt B does love me, or at least she did. I don't know how she feels now. She used to tell me she thought about me like a son. But after Natalie died, the dynamics of everything changed. Now, Nicole, I tried to see her every time that I was supposed to. But there were 5 different occasions where I wasn't able to see her. That wasn't my choice. There was only one of those occasions where it was my fault. The other 4 were appointments to see Tamara and appointments to see Nicole. And they didn't show up for whatever reason, and Region 1 threatened to drop me because I'd missed so many appointments. Well, I didn't miss them. But it was held over my head, like I had done something wrong because those people didn't show up. And Tamara, after dealing with me and realizing what was going on with me and how not having family support really screws you, she decided that she needed to be home with her son. She's originally from Longmont. So she'd come pick me up and she'd take me where I needed to go, and then she'd bring me back. And my car, I had it. It was the same one that I got from Laura and David Nelson, the same one that I had taken to Virginia. And I was trying to decide whether I wanted to move or if I was going to try to stay there. Well, Tamara made that decision for me by quitting. They had a lady who was supposed to be an interim to see me, but she didn't see me. She took too long, and then they changed it to a different lady, and I didn't see them, and I needed love. I needed my friends and my loved ones. I didn't need to be shoved around from this place to that place to see this person, to see that person. I needed one person to stay with me. So Nicole Gerald, I got a hold of her, and she was able to hook me up with a therapist named Jeffrey Ritter, and Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. There's a lady named Kara Heller, or I think that's it. And so I had moved to Colorado by this point. Now this is in June when I had tried to get a hold of Natalie. I'd had enough of it. I needed to be able to go see my friends and family without getting spat on, without getting threatened, without being treated like I had done something that I didn't. And I begged her to call off the dogs. I sent probably 10 emails that day, trying to beg her to stop it. She wouldn't. So Tim Beeson got a hold of me, and he was threatening me and being an asshole. And this is after Ken and Leah had invited me to go live there in Sheridan, although I thought it was Inglewood. So I went, but that first night, Tim was telling me that he was going to come basically end my life. And at that point in time, that's all I wanted. I mean, I haven't seen my friends and family for a very long time by this point. So, I moved into Ken and Leah's, and I kept that place in Chapel, Nebraska, because my lease was an entire year. And so all of my stuff was sitting there in Chapel, Nebraska, all my tools that I can't use there. It's basically an old folks' home. I got neighbors on either side, and I got paper-thin walls. So, I mean, it's not a place where I'm able to build stuff. And I'm a night owl. At night, that's when my brain is the most active. So I need either something to build or I need company. And I didn't have either. More screen. So it turned out that, after Tim doing that stuff for a couple of days at me, God, that guy was a piece of work. So, I got into an argument on his Facebook, I believe, and a guy named Dakota Cooper was calling me out. So I gave him my phone number, and I gave him my email or Facebook thing, got a hold of him, and we had a conversation. He asked me what it was all about. I said it was over Natalie Bollinger, and he said, "Oh, well, fuck, dude, that's a mess. I don't need to hear anything more. I'm sorry you had to deal with that." He also verified Natalie's story about where she had met Tim. Well, come to find out that like Ken and Leah, they had lost all their kids. They were really sad a lot, and being there was, well, it was unpleasant. Ken kind of made it easier to be there, but not a lot easier. Um, and he was depressed, and he came out when I was depressed, and he was telling me that he didn't like the fact that I was out there playing video games. He was bitching about me about how I needed to do something. Well, my back's pretty screwed up, so after I do something for them, it takes me 2 or 3 days to heal up. Ken, he's a good worker, but Leah makes everything a pain in the butt. She had this geodesic dome that she had bought, and she wanted it put up, and then she kept on wanting to be the boss. I've put these things together before. They're not complicated. But she wants it done her way. She doesn't want to listen to somebody who's got experience in doing so. And while I'm counting out the sticks so that we know exactly how many of each color that we have so that we can, put it together as a geodesic dome, she's telling me that we're missing pieces. And then she's telling me that we have too many of these pieces. And then, there's a piece of paper where it's mapped out. The purple pieces go here, the yellow pieces go here, the white pieces go here. Well, she's like, they screwed up because the purple pieces, there's not enough purple pieces. So the purple pieces go where the yellow pieces go. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. And I'm trying to explain it to her. I'm like, I can do this by myself. All right, I can literally do this by myself, but I need Leah to go away. She's making this, it's a half-hour job for 2 people, and we've just spent 4.5 hours out here on it because Leah wants to be boss. Well, I don't care if you own the nuclear power plant. It doesn't make any difference to me. If you don't know anything about nuclear power, you should not be telling the nuclear technicians what to do. And although it's not nuclear science, it is something that was really a pain in the butt. So instead of Ken working with me, he said, oh, I have things that I have to do. And he left, and she left. And it was just me with that dome in basically the most screwed up state that somebody could have to work with it in, and by myself. But I got it done. And I was so pissed off because they were ungrateful for everything that I had done there. I'm like, hey, I can't deal with this. And Ken is telling me, Shawn, I understand. Well, good. If you understand, you need to help me. So Ken, all of his time is spent listening to Leah. Leah and Ken, basically, he listens to her talk all day. She's in love with the sound of her own voice. And so I had a few visitors. Aunt B came down to see me. And it wasn't for very long, but it was good to see her. And then Bailey Beers, she and her boyfriend, they didn't have a place to stay. They were in a pretty rough way, and they needed a place to stay for the night. Leah said it was all right, so I invited them over. And then there was OSHA. OSHA was having some difficulties, and she needed rescued. She was having problems with getting sober, and Ken and Leah, when I was telling them that I told her she couldn't come over, they were like, well, we know her, she can come over. And she came over. So she stayed the night there. And then there was Brandon Ratner. He came and he helped me to move all of my stuff out of the place in Chapel. Um, and the other person who came to see me, Derek Parrish and Joanna Taylor, came to see me. Now, I had gone to South Dakota to see Jamie and the boy. And while I was there, I was having a lot of difficulties. I was trying to get them to talk to me. But Joanna, she doesn't see things the way that somebody who's in my position sees it, because she has a better family life, and she's good looking. She's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. So, while I was in Montana, I really needed her to listen. That's something that people kill themselves over because you won't listen. They need you to shut up with your internal monologue and listen to them. Try to put yourself in their shoes instead of looking for reasons to tell them they're making excuses. And she kept telling me those pretty memes that don't fix anything. Those pretty memes don't make it so I can see my friends and family. Those pretty memes don't make it so that these people stop assaulting me. Those pretty memes don't do shit. I needed her to stop interrupting me to tell me pretty memes. Well, after that, getting her to call me was like pulling teeth. She just wanted to text, knowing that it gives me severe panic attacks, and she just kept on doing it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to get her help so that she can talk to Maddie Boa so we can sit down and have coffee. And she can't even call me long enough to set up coffee. Instead, she's texting me for 4 hours straight. And I'm overwhelmed with this. I'm up in Montana, and Jamie, she's the one that I thought I was in love with. And I went inside and I heard her having sex in the bathroom, and that fucking wigged my shit out. I went outside and I threw down that HTC phone that I had gotten from Natalie. It hadn't worked in months. I only kept it because it had evidence on it. And I knew that something was going to happen to Natalie. Well, I threw it down on the ground and I stomped on it. And when I went to stomp on it, the phone was upwards like this. And my foot went down on it and I messed up the heel of my foot. So Jamie, she tended to my foot, and she called her boss, and he came down and brought crutches, and she also bought me a iPad kind of thing. It's a cheap off-brand one, but she was trying to help out, and she already knew that my plan was to kill myself, and she was all for it. She would have done it for me, except that she didn't want to risk losing her son over it. So after hearing her have sex in the bathroom and me freaking out and screwing up my foot, she helped me to get a bus ticket to go back to Colorado. While I was on that bus, I was in South Dakota. I had made the Michelle Brannick profile. I made that because I was going to kill myself while I was in Montana. I was going to have Jamie drop me off in the mountains with her 22 and blow my brains out. So I made the Michelle Brannick profile, and I was trying to use it to destroy my Facebook before killing myself. Well, it didn't work. So on my way back to Colorado, I'm on a bus, and I tried to get a hold of Maddie Boa and beg her to put a stop to it. I mean, I want to live, but I don't want to live being treated like that. I don't want to live being separated from my friends and family and being accused of being a child molester. I was molested as a child. Being called a rapist. I was raped as a child. Those are terrible things to call a person, especially when people are doing such horrible things over it. So it got to the point where I messaged Maddie. I got into an argument with her on her Facebook. Her and Mackenzie Chapman, who's her girlfriend, they had broken up before I went to Virginia over Maddie's meth use and her meth sales, because Mackenzie has a kid and she couldn't have that around. Well, they had gotten back together when Maddie realized that she didn't stand a chance with Natalie. So, Maddie wanted the set. That's how she called it, the set. She wanted both of the twins. She'd already had a sexual relationship with Alicia, and she wanted to have one with Natalie. She actually wanted them both at the same time, is what she was saying. But I don't consider her a bad person for that. Everybody's got their own fantasies. I fantasize about having somebody to hold me. So, I also got a hold of Alicia, and I got a hold of Natalie to try to get them to help stop it. I used the Michelle Brannick profile to do that. And they still didn't care. It didn't matter to them what I was going through. Um, by this point, I had actually used the Michelle Brannick profile. I used it to expose Natalie's heroin use. That's a big no-no for somebody who's trying to recover. But at the same time, accusing a man of something that he didn't do, not clearing the room, that's a bad idea too. I'd been trying to get the police to help me to get a positive interaction between me and Natalie, or me and Maddie, or me and Alicia to put a stop to it. Because the people that Maddie was running around saying that I did things to were Alicia and Natalie. And it just sucked. So I went back to Ken and Leah's, and I decided I was moving out of that place. By this point, it's November, and I'm trying to move out of the place in Chapel and move all my stuff to Ken and Leah's, and that's because Ken and Leah had a better deal for me than Chapel, Nebraska. Chapel, Nebraska was $217 a month, whereas Ken and Leah, they only wanted $200, although I usually gave them extra because they always had money problems. So right after I moved all my stuff out of Chapel, Nebraska and moved into Ken and Leah's, they changed entirely. Now they weren't, sort of being jerks to me. Now they knew that they had me. They had control of my money. They had control of their money. They had control of life and death over me, basically. And Leah is so needy that I was constantly doing stuff for her, and she's pissed off that I'm not doing enough. And I'm like, lady, you got back problems. You have back problems, and you can't do these things because of your back problems, and you're expecting me to do them without any recovery time. I can't. There was a list that I had of things for people with autism, and I got my first big payment in. When you get disability, you get back payments of $2,200 every 6 months until your back payments are paid up. So I had only back payments to Virginia when I was working at Labor Ready, so it came out to like $8,400 or $8,600 overall. So I would have made 3 payments, would have gotten 3 payments of $2,200 and 1 payment of about $1,000. And I planned on using that money to either A, get a place in Chapel, Nebraska, because Megan Christie was trying to sell her house for $7,000, or get some property in southern Colorado that I could move on to with lots of building materials. Rocks, that's building materials to me. Dirt, that's building materials to me. Trees, that's building materials to me. And for me, it's been my calling to save lives. It's the most important thing to me, saving lives. By this point, I'd said a lot of really mean things. I was trying to explain that I loved these people and I would never harm them, but that didn't matter to them. What mattered to them was that they were embarrassed and I needed to be punished for their embarrassment. And I was punished. I've been punished to this day for it. So the officers in Chapel, Nebraska, who wouldn't listen to me, and the ones in Boulder, I actually talked to a few in Boulder, who basically told me that there wasn't anything they could do and there wasn't anything I could do. So by this point, Nicole Jarrell had hooked me up with Jeff Ritter, and I was trying to get some help from him to get an attorney. Ken and Leah, I had gotten my first payment of $2,200, and I used that to get Brandon Ratner to help me get my stuff, the rest of my stuff from Chapel, and move it down to Ken and Leah's. Also, my car wasn't working at that point, and I was on crutches. So, it was difficult for me to get around, and I paid Ken $100 each for 2 different trips. And he was supposed to do things for me for that $100 because I offered him 50 at first and he wouldn't go. Like, I can't do this stuff myself. I need someone else to do this for me. I can't walk back with my groceries even. I'm on crutches. So I ended up giving him a bunch of money for supplies, about $600. That was for my food and everything like that, cigarettes, whatever. And he didn't get those things with that money. Also, I had gotten an Oculus Rift. It was one of the things that was on the list of things that help people with autism. And the major issue with that is that the thing wouldn't work. It wasn't something that I wanted or needed, so I took it back. And I was going to order another thing similar to it that's a little bit cheaper. Well, that thing that's cheaper, I gave Ken the money for it. We turned in the Oculus. I got my $600 back from that, and I gave that, or it was $500, I think, and I gave Ken that money so that he could buy the other one and order it. And he didn't order it. He said that there was an overdraft and that they had taken some of the money out, so he couldn't order that thing for me. And then there was also the fact that I was paid up 3 months in advance on my rent, and I made sure that I paid rent every month after that regardless, because I wanted to stay 3 months ahead on my rent. Well, Leah smokes a lot of marijuana, and me, I have social anxiety. I smoke marijuana when I have to deal with people like Leah especially. But in order for me to smoke a bowl, I have to listen to Leah talk about being a stripper in front of her son for 45 minutes or more. And it was very overwhelming for me. Meanwhile, I've been driving back and forth between their place and going to see Nicole Peralta in Nebraska, and it's overwhelming for me driving back and forth to do that because I have panic attacks from driving now. Too much time in my head. I needed a safe place, and I'm worried that I'm never going to have one. I'm always going to be stuck in somebody else's space, subject to their will and command, subject to having my things being stolen, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I stopped going to see Nicole Peralta, and I started trying to go through Jeff Ritter, and it worked out pretty decent to begin with. When James Golden came down, he's actually the one, when I was on the bus down there from South Dakota, James Golden is the one who came and picked me up. He was going to try to set me up with a different place with a guy who lived in a different part of town. And that guy didn't want any more roommates. He was about to lose his place, and he didn't want to keep it, so he didn't want a roommate. But James Golden was a friend of Ken and Leah's, and they were pissed off that I didn't invite him over. Kind of like they were pissed off that I didn't invite Bailey Beers over. So I invited James over. They hadn't seen him in years. Now James, he was going to give me a Viking death, but he didn't follow through. I'd have given him a good fight, but I'd let him win. It was difficult for me at that point to speak, because if there's multiple people, especially if it's family, you're not having a one-on-one conversation. Ken had basically stolen all my money, about $1,200 worth. Outright stole $600, and $600 of them I gave $600 that I had given to him for things that he didn't get. That money for the replacement for the Oculus, that was outright stolen. The $600 that he got otherwise was not outright stolen. That was given to him for services that were never rendered. Plus, I had paid up my rent 3 months in advance. So, if you really do the math about it, it's about $1,800. But that's not the important part. That was all written down on a ledger there. I was really pissed off. I still couldn't go to Boulder and see my friends. And even though I was closer to them, my car wasn't working, and I needed my money to pay bills and to fix my car. And, well, Ken wasn't coming up with that money. He told me that he would pay me that on the 8th of December. Now, until the beginning of January, I could have actually gone back to Chapel, Nebraska and re-rented my apartment. That wouldn't have been a problem, except I didn't have any money because Ken and Leah stole it all. And they wanted marijuana, and I gave them enough money to get Leah some marijuana, and also for me to have some so I wouldn't have to go in the house and deal with her. And Ken was going to go get that weed, and it was $100 for an ounce, and I gave him the money for it. And he got 2 ounces, I believe, is what I gave him the money for. Or, no, I gave him the money for 1 ounce. He was going to get an ounce for the house, and I was going to get an ounce for me. Well, instead, I didn't get my weed. And I was waiting for it and waiting for it and waiting for it. And I finally said, dude, are you going to give me my weed? He's like, dude, we already smoked it. We smoked it all with you. I'm like, dude, I've smoked 3 bowls of weed with you guys since I gave you that $100. So, December comes around, he's supposed to pay me back on the 8th of December, and he doesn't. He doesn't pay me back a single penny. And I'm pretty pissed off at this point. I still don't have a safe place to go. I'm getting treated like a child molester and a rapist. And Ken is aware of the situation with me and Natalie. He's well aware of it. I've spoken with him about it. And I've also spoken with Leah about it. So they're both aware of what's going on. And come the 8th, when they didn't pay me back, I was like, I gotta find a place to go. And I had gotten a hold of Natalie's mother the next day. I really wanted to go see my brother in Boulder. I wanted to go there without being threatened, harassed, or intimidated. And I was being called names that I didn't do. And I asked for her help to put a stop to it. She didn't even see it. So I had gotten a hold of Natalie to let her know that she needs to come forward and tell the truth, or I'm going to retaliate. And I did retaliate. See, I find nonviolent ways to do what it is that I do. If I have to physically harm somebody to fight a war, I would rather be the one who's getting physically harmed. If I have to kill somebody to fight a war, I would rather be the person who dies. But Natalie was fully involved in her drug life, and she was embarrassed about being exposed. Yeah, she's going to be pissed. And she was. So I exposed her dad on his own Facebook with the email that she had sent me in 2016. And that made my life hell. I mean, I was so pissed off. You know, I've been through a year of hell over something that I didn't do. And the cops won't help me, and Natalie won't help me. Alicia won't help me. Maddie won't help me. Natalie's mother won't help me. I've gone through every resource that I can possibly think of to try to get help to make this stop so I can see my loved ones. So I exposed Ted on the 12th, I believe, the night of the 12th of December 2017. And the next morning, I believe it was pretty early, I got a phone call, and I wasn't sure if it was a dream or if she actually called me, but Natalie had called me to tell me that I made things worse with her family. And on the 15th of December, she sent me an email saying that she wanted to meet up. And I let her know I was worried about it. I would rather meet her at the police station than at the Starbucks on Pearl, because I'd been afraid of the Starbucks on Pearl since when she rescued me. I was, even without the things that all these people did to me over her, losing her as a friend was the last straw, and I was suicidal starting when I left Virginia. I needed a friend, and I couldn't get people to understand I needed a friend in person. So Jeff Ritter, he was going to help me get a lawyer. He said that I needed paperwork before the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless could help me. And so on the 15th, I was pretty sure it was going to be the cops, but there was a decent chance that Natalie might have been telling the truth. I mean, I was surprised that she was in Colorado at that point. I'm like, she's not in Virginia? I'm freaking out because, you know, here's this person that I drove 1,700 miles to get away from so her and her family can feel safe. She's in the same friggin' state that I am. Oh my God. You know? Well, I had gotten a hold of Chelsea Worsing, and she was going to go with me. And I had gotten a hold of Miss Peaches, who was living off of Melody and 120th in Aurora. And Chelsea told me she'd try to make it. And Miss Peaches said if I was there by the time she left for work, that I could go with her. She'd give me a ride there. So I walked over 100 blocks to go meet Miss Peaches, and I walked all the way up Federal to do that. I hopped on the bus at 44th, and it took me up to 95th, I believe. And then from 95th and Federal, I walked up to 120th, took a right, and made it to Miss Peach's house on time. On the way there, I had stopped at a Starbucks to make a video, and I had a Starbucks card, so I didn't have to spend any money on that, thank goodness. Well, when I got to Boulder, I went to where we were going to meet up, and I was, you know, pretty sad that it wasn't at the police station, because I really was afraid of her by that point. Chelsea wasn't able to show up, so I was having some pretty severe anxiety. And then the officer came in with the dude who had the protection order, and they walked up to the wrong guy and were trying to serve him a protection order. They're like, "Are you Shawn Schwartz?" No, me. So they handed it to me, and I had asked the officer if he would take my report, and he refused. That officer's name is Officer Michael West. So he left, and I had this piece of paper, and Miss Peaches, you know, took me back to her place and gave me bus money so I could get back to Ken and Leah's. And so I took the bus money, and I went to Ken and Leah's. And I didn't have any money after that. Well, according to that protection order, I hadn't even opened it. I mean, I'm still trying to get Jeff Ritter to help me get a lawyer. And I called him up, and I let him know that I had some paperwork so he could help me get a lawyer now. Well, it was real slow going, and I wasn't going to get paid until I was used to getting paid on the 27th or the 28th of the month. But they ended up paying me my disability money on the 23rd, which is still a day too late for me to go to court. There was no way I could have made it to that court date. That's the problem with setting a court date for 6 days after you get served the protection order. I didn't even know there was a such thing as a temporary protection order. I thought once you handed it to you, it was permanent automatically. And that presented an issue for me because that meant that nobody was going to do anything about the things happening in Boulder. And I needed my friends. I needed my loved ones. And a lot of them, even to this day, once in a while, they send me something saying, "Hey, Shawn, come see me." I can't. I'm in the state of California now. I don't have any money. Everything that I had, everything that I earned got taken from me my entire life because I didn't have support. I didn't have family support. I didn't have a place to keep my belongings that was safe. People stole my belongings. Landlords stole my belongings. Roommates stole my belongings. It was nothing off of them, but it was a lot off of me. And so come the 26th, day after Christmas, I went over to Miss Peach's house for the 4th time in a year to try to get help with this. Now, Miss Peaches she didn't understand that it has to be one-on-one. She didn't understand the overwhelming thing, and I had been trying to explain it to her that I need your attention. You know, I don't need your attention while you're playing video games because you're not paying attention to me. I don't need your attention while you're texting on your phone. I need you to pay me attention. And so on the 26th, I was sick and tired of Ken and Leah and their BS. They got to have a Christmas, and I didn't. And I wasn't pissed off about not having a Christmas. I was pissed off because I didn't have any money. I couldn't feed myself. I didn't have any of the things that they had promised. They'd changed completely 180 degrees. And although I was suicidal as shit, I kept on trying to have hope. I spent a lot of the money that I had on getting tools so that I could make the things that I had been trying to make. I made some videos between the 16th and the 26th. One of those videos was, two of those videos were about Ken and Leah stealing all my money. And on the 26th, I got into an argument with Ken over my money. Mostly because Leah wanted to chime in. Leah didn't have anything to do with my money. She was pissed off because she didn't have any weed. They'd already hijacked my money for weed I didn't get to smoke, and she smokes a lot. So I'm in this argument with Ken and Leah, and Ken is doing the passive dismissive asshole attitude, and Leah's screaming at me, and Dawn comes out of her room, and she starts screaming at the top of her lungs and assaulting me with her chest. So I don't want to be smacked in the chest by this woman. I've got 3 adults yelling at me. I'm having a panic attack because my money is all gone, and there's nothing I can do. Meanwhile, I care about these people, so I don't want to go to the police. I need a lawyer so we can try to settle this without police. So I let them know that I was leaving to go find my voice. And I went to Miss Peach's house. And on the way there, I stopped and got some chorizo and some other Mexican food to try to learn some Spanish. Tough to explain, but if you use it, you'll remember it. Whereas if you just have it from a book, you're not going to remember the foreign languages easily. Chorizo, it's easy to remember when you're cooking it and talking about it while you're cooking it. So, we were going to set up a GoFundMe. There was a woman named Shawn Sinclair, and she was going to try to help me, but her daughter disappeared. Her daughter's father took her. So I made a post about that. And Mandy Singer, her son, had been missing. The last place that he had been seen was with my friend Ogre, or Christopher Weaver. So it turned out later on, many months later, well, we'll get to that part later because it's later on in the story. I made a video at Miss Peach's house about Mandy Singer's son missing. And I made a video at Miss Peach's house about Shauna Sinclair's daughter missing. And we went about our day. Miss Peaches had her back surgery. I had set it up with Miss Keller and Mr. Ritter to go in to have my teeth possibly get dentures, and also to have my back x-rayed through the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless. Those appointments were set for January. So at Miss Peach's, I was going to try to get a lawyer, and I was going to try to set up a GoFundMe to get myself a safe place. And I was there on the 26th. I was there until the 28th because she didn't have time because she has a family, and she also had back surgery. And she had a full house. I mean, it was her 2 kids, her kid's dad, her kid's dad's dad, and her mother, and myself. So it's a pretty full house for an apartment. And I was in the kitchen. We were getting ready to cook dinner, and we were going to get started on the GoFundMe right after dinner. Before we got started on dinner, I was in the kitchen. I got a phone call, and I put it on speakerphone, and it was a phone call from the police saying that Natalie was missing. The story from here is going to get really confusing. So I'm going to stop video number 3.